And hopefully we can... Hi, Timo! Welcome back!
Made it!
So, I'm just going to recap for everybody. Welcome back, everybody. And if you do have questions, do let us know what the questions are, because I'd love to ask Timo on your behalf. So, welcome. Timo, you're an actor, a stage manager, and also an author. And I do have a surprise for you. I found the book. I pass up that I did actually lose this for a little while, and it was under a huge pile of things that weren't books. It was in my art kind of corner. So
you see, I brought one just in case.
I know, because you asked me to find it anyway. So it is nice to have a physical copy of it. And I really want to ask you, before we come on to everything else, how did you come to publishing your first book? Because it really is quite an achievement. I've been doing a bit of research on, you know, kind of entrepreneurs and business people and things, and it's quite an achievement. It's quite an accolade actually to have a published book. It's something that a lot of people have on their things that they want to do in life. So how did it come about?
It's definitely a bigger mission than I expected, to be honest. Maybe it was a bit foolish to start this whole thing. No, but I mean, you know, I worked in the theater industry for quite a while, and I studied theater science, and I got a diploma for stage technology, and I just realized I was always interested in how to work professionally and how to make operations really smooth. And so I found out that the more I learned about the other people working around me, the better obviously my communication with them became. And then more and more people came up to me and asked me like, hey, Timo, how would you do this? Because you seem to have a good system to speak to them. And so, yeah, like I told you before, like at some point I just said, okay, I might as well write a book. You know, it was just a joke, but I researched a lot, and I did a lot of interviews with all sorts of different people. And there's not much literature around. So that motivated me to find my niche. And it was actually, finding a publisher was actually, this made it a little bit harder because they usually are looking for a niche that exists already, rather than opening a new one. But so I sort of had to convince my publisher that this is something no one has yet. And they jumped on board, and I'm really happy because I got Bloomsbury in London, which is a major book deal, really. And it was a really nice process with them too, to improve my first book, because I hadn't done it ever. But yeah, but like I said, in the beginning, I was like, okay, I'm gonna write a book, you know, like you said, everyone wants to write a book, you know. And then after a couple of months, I was like, okay, I've gone that far, I'm not gonna stop anymore, you know. And then a couple of months later, I was like, oh, I've gone that far, I'm not gonna stop anymore. And that took for 5 years. Until It was ideal, but then I mean, I was quite lucky to reach the right person at the right moment. But I mean, it's how it is sometimes. But yeah, but then I needed another, let's say, half a year or a year to finish my manuscript, and then the whole process within the publishing agency took another year. To proofread it, to produce it, to print it, to market it. And so the last of the 5 years was just them finishing it off. But yeah,
it's just an amazing achievement. I would absolutely love to be one of those. I'm not sure I want to map out the next 5 years, but
I don't know.
And we met at Rosebruford College, didn't we? So I took you on a tour. So I'm sure a lot of people are also reading this book that are studying, you know, to be in the industry, the entertainment and performing arts industry. And I know that you've worked in classical opera, you've worked in circus, you've worked in theatre, you've worked in music festivals and on cruise ships in up to 40 countries around the world. Can you tell me about, have you got a story about one of those different places in which you've worked? Maybe something really funny happened, or is there a key thing that you want to tell us about?
I'd say there was one really interesting story that happened in Egypt. We were doing a show right at the bottom of the pyramids, beautiful setting, and it was a major telecommunication company, and they invited they're probably like top 1,500 guests, clients to this event. And it was massive. It was like beautiful setting, and obviously they had a lot of performers invited, and they started off the evening with like nice walking acts, stilt walkers, fire performers, jugglers, and then it continued. You know, then later on they had beautiful laser and light shows around the pyramids, and then they had river dance, a full cast of river dance there, and then the highlight in the end was a 1 hour set of Mariah Carey, and yeah, so they've done a really nice setup for their clients, but they only forgot one little thing, which was that because they invited most of the clients from the Middle East, so a lot of people from Sharjah, from Dubai, from Saudi Arabia, and the one thing that is different when you produce shows over there, the one thing that's different to Europe or Western countries is that your lineup needs to be in the opposite direction, because the sheikh will never stay to the end, or usually will never stay to the end. So you usually start up with your highlight and then sort of go slower at the end of the evening. So what happened that night was that by the time Mariah Carey went on stage, it was only 150 guests left. So she literally performed for more employees and workers and bartenders than for the actual audience, for the actual clients. And so this was obviously a big failure of the whole event. And I mean, they invested tons of money. And this was one of the moments where I really realized, oh my God, like one little thing in communication can change so much, especially intercultural, international communication. And everyone had done an amazing job, but disregarding this one little fact. And so, yeah, so this was also part of the thing that I really wanted to bring this international communication into the book, and how to create an intercultural dialogue and, understand the other culture that you're working for. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And it's just the Western way of doing things is very different to the Eastern way or the Middle Eastern way of doing things, or another part of the world as well. And also there's differentiations within Europe. Can you tell me about, I'm really particularly interested in the music festivals that you did. Which countries were you doing those in? Is there one that you could talk to us about that you really enjoyed?
Well, my favorite experience was in Hungary at the Sziget Festival. It's one of the biggest music festivals in Europe, I guess. And it was back in the day. I was part of a band, and we won this Austrian band contest. And so one of the prizes that we had was to go to Sziget Festival and play there. And it was just an amazing experience to perform there, and see all the other bands and see the whole festival and be part of it. So that was a really nice experience. Other than that, I've done a lot of performances for other bands, like show performances, dancing, acrobatics. And I think the really nice part of being a dancer or acrobat is that you really get thrown into all sorts of different shows or different settings. So you can really learn about that a lot. I mean, I also produced in other countries or created shows, but anyway, as an acrobat, you're sort of the specialty act, and so you can also dive into these different I mean, we did cruise ships, like you said, we did millionaires' weddings, we did S&M parties, we did everything. And I think that's something I find really interesting, is to dive into these different worlds and learn from them. And like you said, you really enjoy your international guests here on IG Live. And for me, it was the same thing to understand these different cultures and see how people are when, yeah.
Absolutely. And you speak 2 languages, right?
Yeah, I speak German and English fluent, but then I speak French and Spanish a little bit.
Nice.
Yeah, so that helped.
When you're traveling.
Yeah. So I worked in Mexico quite a lot, and there was just no way to get around with English. So I had basic Spanish, but working there just helped me a lot to improve my language skills.
And tell me how have you been working in this industry then during lockdown? Have you been doing a lot of things remotely on Zoom and things like that, or are you planning a lot of projects, you know, for the next 6 months? How are you working?
Well, I'd say most of the freelance stuff is cut down completely. But I was lucky enough to have signed to the opera here in Vienna, so I have a fixed position as a stage manager there. And now, I mean, it's on and off really. I mean, we had a couple of really nice months, this September, October, where we performed every night, and it was brilliant. It was great atmosphere. But then it was another lockdown and another lockdown, and I mean, we just finished rehearsing a lot of productions, so a lot of shows are sort of in the pipeline now, and we have done the general rehearsal, but we never actually performed it. So yeah, we're basically waiting for it to open. But I mean, I use that time for other projects, obviously, but I can't wait to get back to the actual theater and work there.
Absolutely. And there's one thing I want to ask you. I noticed that you have on your YouTube thing, and also I think on the back of your book, that you're interested in pyrotechnics. That's one of the things that you specialize in. Could you talk to me about that?
Well, that was when I first started at the age of 18. I was hired by a show company called Phoenix Shows, and my boss, Mark Broir, he really introduced me although I was hired as a dancer originally, he introduced me to all sorts of different departments because the show group was specialized in combining human physical performance with technology, special effects, so pyrotechnics and laser and projections, 3D projections. And so he really taught me everything about pyrotechnics, and I was in charge of programming the laser. So yeah, so I did set up quite a lot of fireworks and pyrotechnics back in the day. I mean, it's been a few years now, but this is something I definitely always enjoyed. I feel like it's become a lot harder to do this stuff. Like, I mean, in 2000, I believe it was 2004, 2005, a few clubs burned down, and so they really got a lot harder on the regulations for pyrotechnics, which is fair, of course. But because of that, also it became much harder to create something really nice with pyrotechnics. I feel like the golden age for laser and pyros is almost over, because it just, yeah, I mean, it became really hard to do something nice. And yeah, so but also, like, my personal path has changed a little bit, so I'm not doing pyrotechnics that much anymore, but I definitely enjoy doing it.
So if I came over to your house, I wouldn't expect to have a full firework display or lighting or pyrotechnics.
Probably not.
Okay, all right. Just so I know. By the way, somebody said that your book is absolutely fantastic on the chat, and if anybody has any questions, please do put them in the comments. So I don't know if you can see the people who join. Sometimes people ask me to read them all out, but because people don't necessarily have their names on there, it's a little bit random. But yeah, it's just fabulous to have people join. And I know that you're teaching as well, aren't you? You kind of freelance at different universities. Could you talk to me about that, how it's really important to kind of impart your knowledge onto the next generation, basically?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, this teaching sort of came out of my book, obviously. I was teaching at the university in Vienna. I did a lot of, like, workshops for Circus Academy, like this stuff. And for me, it's something, on the one hand, it's really nice to sort of take a written book and bring it into a different format and work with people about it. And, like, the spoken language is different than the written language already, but then, like, will there be a second part of the book, someone's asking? We'll see about that. So yeah, so by teaching, I learn a lot too, and I really enjoy the exchange with the students. And it's, in a way, it's also like learning from them, learning how their young mentality, and see how they approach the whole industry. And I think, especially now with this whole pandemic, I think it's really important to sort of reinvent the theater and reinvent the performing arts. And it definitely has to start with communication. It has to start with becoming more efficient, becoming more fluent, finding new sort of art forms. And this is something I'd be really interested over the next few years, because I believe it will take another couple of years for it to come back to where it used to be. But I'm definitely, I mean, this is something I'm actually looking forward to, sort of rebuilding it up and seeing where it will all go.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, where did you study originally, by the way?
Well, I started being on stage, so just practically, and then at some point, like I said earlier, I wanted to become really professional. I just wanted to learn more, and so the only thing I found in Vienna was theater science. So I studied at the University in Vienna, but then I felt like it's more like science, it's more theories, and I wanted to have more practical knowledge, and so this is when I did my diploma for stage technology. So about staging, rigging, lighting. I've worked a little bit as a technician, but I would say it highly helped me to create and to understand what is actually possible with the technology that we have, and how to use it for creating something.
And also having those acting skills, so having studied acting as well, not only are you able to use a camera, you're confident using it, you're not, I mean, most of the people I've spoken to have been very fluid, I thought, but afterwards they told me, oh my God, I was so nervous, and these are all really successful people. So how do you feel that having those acting skills has helped you in your career, both on stage and off stage? Tell me about that.
Well, I always say, like, being on stage is something that I would love my kids to experience too. Not because I want them to be on stage, but I want them to feel that moment, that spotlight moment, to be able to focus, to be able to go as you planned, go as you rehearsed, be easy about it, being used to sort of being in front of an audience. Because I think this is something that you always have to do in life, whether it's a job interview or if it's applying for a visa, really. I mean, you know, it's always exchanging with people. And I think it's good to be able to focus, even if you're nervous, to use that nervosity to actually perform better, and not make it stop you.
Yeah, use that energy that could come across as a sort of a jittery thing and change it into like a better way of using that energy. So yeah. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and then obviously the physical part is something that is there for the rest of your life. I mean, physical performance, being in shape, is something that also makes you more stress resistant and more, yeah, just, I think that's a big part of performing too.
Absolutely, yeah, I totally agree with that. I
Someone asked, is your book also for people that don't work on stage? Absolutely. It's written obviously with the background of being on stage or being backstage, but also last year, no, it's been 2 years already, 2019, I hosted the Collaborating Conference in Vienna, which was sort of a get-together of all sorts of creative people, not only from the stage. And the goal was just to make them exchange ideas and inspire each other. And I think the core content of the book is about communication, and that is something that's not only backstage, but the backstage gives a nice setting, a nice setting for anecdotes, for nice theories that you can take and bring it to your own life. So it's not just for backstage people. It's definitely for anyone who works creative, who wants to improve their creativity, communication. Yeah.
And which section, because there's a lot of information in the book, which kind of chapter would you like to, if you had time, obviously, would you like to expand upon? Is there a certain area of theatre and collaboration that you would love to spend time?
You mean if I would write it again? If I revise it?
Yeah, if there was a section that you'd like to write more on, like you could take one part of the book and spend another 5 years like really focusing on that. Is there any particular area that you really love?
I think it's chapter 3, which is the intercultural exchange. This is something that I sort of slid into because in the beginning I was like, okay, I want to write about the different cultures, and I mean not just the international cultures, but also the working cultures. Because like in theater, the culture of a dancer is completely different than the culture of a technician, like the way they speak, the way they dress, but also the international sort of exchange. And this is something that I sort of felt was important for my book, but I didn't quite know where it should go in my book. And then I think I found a nice spot in the whole red thread. And also the publisher said like, okay, the only thing we want you to improve is to put more focus on the international communication, because that's something that's really rising. And so it became quite a strong part of the book. But I feel like this field is just so open. There's so much more to discover and so much more to research. So I would probably make it even bigger.
It's a big subject. And as you were talking about it, I sort of reached towards it, the book, and picked it up and looked at the page and thought, yeah, I might read that. And I thought, no, I can't read it right now. Obviously, I'm on camera. But I did see on the front page, I just want to read this out to everybody, that you wrote me a note when you gave me a copy. So it says, "Dear Laura," big exclamation mark, "it was such a pleasure meeting you, and thank you for doing such a brilliant job introducing me to 101 people. Here is to many more meetings in the future, Timo." And I think both of us absolutely love networking and meeting new people, and also a mutual friend of ours connected us up, because at the time I was working at Rosebery College. So yeah, it's just a big love of mine as well, the whole social capital arena. I wrote my dissertation on that subject, so I love the whole networking, collaborating thing as well. So. Yeah.
But I have to say that day was really fun.
Yeah.
I love that. Like there was so much energy. It was really, really great.
Absolutely. And so we're almost at the end of the talk, but is there anything else that you want to tell us about what you're working on in the future? I know a few people have asked and mentioned about your book. It's really amazing that people have come that have read it. So, you know, they've got some background basically, and they're coming with a lot of information already. Is there anything that you want to let us know? Are you planning another book, or what projects are you working on?
Well, I think there's two things that are, let's say, on the top of my list right now. And one thing is definitely to translate the book into German too. I have to say I really underestimated the language barrier with the people around me here. What a big thing it is to read an English book. And so I kind of feel like I owe it to my students and the people that are working with me to have a German version. So I'm currently looking into German publishers that are willing to bring out a German version. So that's one thing. And the other thing is to actually have another round of the Collaborating Conference, because I still get a lot of really nice feedback, how people connected and how people exchanged and how they still have all these contacts and these ideas from back then. And so, I mean, with this pandemic right now, we might have to change a few things. And I mean, but I don't really want to make it an online conference, because I feel like people should actually meet and talk and feel each other to do this. But yeah, this is something I sort of need to figure out how to come up with another conference in these times.
Anyway, the other thing I was thinking, what about changing into a children's, but you could do like a really short version for kids who are thinking about moving into the industry.
Which age group you think?
I think maybe a little bit older, like sort of. I think we call it year 9 here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's sort of like it's kind of 11, 12, 13 age group, that kind of early secondary school maybe.
Okay.
I don't know, I can just see it being really interesting for kids who are thinking about being on stage or being backstage. I don't know, could be fun.
That's interesting. Yeah, I got a few emails in the last weeks actually. It's funny now in the pandemic, people seem to have more time for reading. And so I got a few emails saying like, "Oh, Timo, thanks for the book. It's core reading at the university now," or I found your book and it's become really important for my master studies. And so it's a really nice feedback. But it's an interesting point that you said, to bring it even further, like not to start at college, but even at the age of 11, 12. It's interesting.
I think so. I mean, when I was growing up, I don't know if there were any books on specific. It was all, you know, kids, children's stories and stuff like that. But it might have been quite fun to read about. I know at the moment there are quite, for artists and people that want to get into something like that, like Kusama has written like a beautiful book, or there's a book about her, you know, so there's stuff like that. But I don't know about sort of normal people moving into those professions. That might be a nice angle.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So you could spend 5 years writing a new book for adults, couldn't you? And then another 5 years writing.
Sounds tempting. No, I mean, I hope I will be a little bit faster with the next one.
Yeah. No, I think it's amazing. And are you encouraging your daughters then to sort of get on stage or think about the performing arts industry?
Well, one of them performed already at the age of 5 in The Sound of Music, the Truck Children. And the other one, I mean, I don't put any pressure on them, not at all, but obviously they see it. My wife, I mean, she quit now, but she was in the State Ballet in Vienna for 10 years. And so they're very used to being backstage and very used to seeing shows. So this is something they definitely copy a lot. They play circus or shows or presentations in all sorts of ways at home a lot.
That's fabulous, isn't it, to encourage that?
Yeah, so yeah, I'll see where their path is leading, but like I said, I think it's something that I would like them to at least experience once. Whether they continue or not, I don't really care.
Definitely. And are there any more questions? Do ask away if you have any. Otherwise, we'll probably have to. Oh, there's one. Oh no, it's just a wave. I got excited then. But it's been amazing talking to you, Timo. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and definitely follow Timo if you want to on his YouTube channel. What's your YouTube channel and your website so that people
it's
can have
Collaborating Backstage. So like the book title. So it's in one, collaboratingbackstage.com, and the YouTube is also Collaborating Backstage, and you'll find a lot more there.
It's been amazing. Have a lovely rest of the evening in Austria, and hopefully speak to you really soon, and hopefully see you again in person at some point.
Yes, I hope so too, Laura. All right. Thanks a lot too.
Bye now. Bye.
Bye, everybody.